Witchers, welcome back to another video by me, the WitcherGeorge, as I discuss the Witcher Remake, everything we know so far. I wanted to make this video for a little bit of time now. I made a video on my other channel talking about stuff I would like to see in the Witcher Remake. I'll probably include some of that information in here, but for today's video, I essentially want to go over everything we know so far about the Witcher Remake, so let's just get into it. So the first thing we know is that the Witcher Remake is not going to be developed by CDPROJEKTRED. It's going to be developed by a different Polish studio. They're both Polish, but it's also a Polish studio called Fool's Theory. And what I found out by looking into this studio a little bit that I think is something many fans will be quite glad to hear is that this studio was founded by some veteran members of CDPROJEKTRED's development team, particularly a lot of people that worked on The Witcher 1, The Witcher 2, and The Witcher 3. So these are people that are not just complete, I don't want to say amateurs, or people that don't really know the franchise. They actually worked on the franchise in the past. So giving it to this studio is not something I'm that scared about. I used to be more apprehensive about it, but actually, having learned more about the development team, I'm more impressed with what we might be getting. I've seen some of the games this development team has worked on. They look relatively interesting. It's not anything similar to The Witcher, in my opinion. I mean, at least the games that they've produced, but that doesn't mean they couldn't make an amazing game. I mean, look at the difference between The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2. It's night and day. I mean, The Witcher 1 is still a great game, really enjoyable, but it's such a different game. And one thing that I looked into, which I thought was quite interesting about this particular developer, is that they provided programming and tool support for Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that's a pretty interesting fact to bear in mind, because Baldur's Gate 3, I think, largely received a lot of praise for the systems that it implemented. I heard a lot of people saying they preferred it to The Witcher 3, which to me is blasphemy. But I do think that the fact that they worked on the previous Witcher games, they provided support for Baldur's Gate 3, it's a good sign that at least the Witcher Remake is not going to be having people that have no idea what the franchise is, don't really know the genre. It's just this sort of, how can we save money? Let's get another studio to do it. They've actually got a studio where they know a bit about The Witcher. And one bit of information I wanted to mention yet again in regard to this game developer is that they mentioned that they're going to be changing a lot of the parts of The Witcher 1 in their remake that they feel are outdated or just not designed very well. This could be even parts of the story, who knows. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I'm not so against it because, well, I've played The Witcher 1, I've played The Witcher 2, I've played The Witcher 3, I've played all of them multiple times, I know these games, and I do have to say that I think The Witcher 1 has aged poorly in some areas, and I'm not talking about some sort of political thing, I just mean like actual game design. I think it is better in some ways and worse in others, right? So I'm fine with them refining the story slightly to make it lead into The Witcher 2 and 3 a little bit better, clear up some of the loose ends maybe, or just make it flow as if, because it can be quite a shock going from 1 to 2 to 3. 2 to 3 I feel is pretty sort of, it flows quite well. 1 to 2 is like, it's almost like two completely different games. The stories do line up, but it's a little bit like, you get into The Witcher 2 and a lot of things in The Witcher 1 are quite confusing, some of the lore you learn, some of the characters. I could do a breakdown of this sort of thing in the future. So I'm actually quite happy there's going to be some of these changes just to make things a little bit more cohesive throughout the series. But you got to understand, this isn't sort of going against what The Witcher 1 is. I think we already have The Witcher 1 in its original form if you want to play that. I would like to see a game that fits more with the flow of the saga. If they can do that, I'm happy with that. It depends what they decide to remove and what they decide to keep. I think that's the most important thing. I don't want them to go and just start changing characters, changing, I don't know, where characters are from, whatever, that sort of thing, or changing their entire story. I just think it'd be better to have a little bit more cohesive storytelling, you know, explaining things a bit more like, okay, Vesemir, you know, he mutated Leo or whatever, like, okay, how did that happen? Why did they not really pursue this after everything with Leo? What happened there? I just like a little bit more sort of cohesion in that sort of sense. There's a lot of these little lore points that confuse you. You even have it in The Witcher 3 with the higher vampires, right? Which they did explain, but it was obvious that they just made a bit of a mistake there. So yeah, that's the main points we can get about this studio so far. There has been some controversy. I've heard about them changing certain things in the game that they consider outdated past just actual game design. It's more to do with some political stuff. I'm not going to get too into that because I'm not entirely sure about all of that, but all I'll say on that sort of thing is that I don't think they should change anything too significantly from the game unless it is outright just awful. Although, within a fantasy universe, I feel that these sort of awful things are part of it. You know, it's meant to be this medieval world. Things weren't amazing back then, so I think you've got to bear that in mind. Anyway, on to the next point. So this is a point I have discussed before, and it's something that seems to be happening with a lot of games recently, and it's that the Witcher Remake is going to be made in the Unreal Engine 5, just like the Witcher Polaris or the Witcher 4. And this is something that I'm not entirely against. I have mixed feelings about it because I also think that it's nice to have different game engines because there's a bit of competition. I don't just want everything to be unitary and, you know, it's just one single game engine that is every single game. I think that you can do a lot within a game engine, but I'm sure there are sort of factors that kind of box people into a certain design if you're all using the same engine. I know that it can allow a lot of developers to try different things, different ideas, but there are some great game engines out there that aren't the Unreal Engine 5, although the Unreal Engine 5 is good. So I'm not entirely against it. I'm excited to see what they can make with it. I hope it's just good with whatever they do make. I think the things we've seen from the Unreal Engine 5, just from independent, I suppose you could say, developers or fans making things from games. I've seen some Skyrim, which I'm pretty sure was done in the Unreal Engine 5, some World of Warcraft stuff, a load of stuff, and it all looks pretty good. So I'm not entirely against it. I'm actually for it. I do think that if every Witcher game going forward is going to be in this engine for the time being, I just want them to maintain that feeling that is The Witcher. A lot of the things that have been made in the Unreal Engine 5 do not feel exactly the same. They feel quite unique. So I see that this engine is quite versatile, and I think it could still be pretty interesting. Next up, and this is a point that is actually quite new, it was recently revealed in a earnings report, I believe. It was just mentioned that it's going to be an open world RPG. So that means that the Witcher Remake is not going to be like the original Witcher game, which, although it was sort of open world, it was sort of a kind of mixture, because you went from zone to zone to zone, and going back through the zones was not really doable in a lot of areas. And I think it's quite nice to have this idea that, for example, you can go into Vizima, right? That's the main city of The Witcher 1. I love Vizima. I'm sure you guys love Vizima too. It's iconic in The Witcher's story, in the books, just in general. In The Witcher 3, we can kind of go to Vizima, I suppose. We go to Vizima's palace, and just this idea that we can walk into Vizima, walk out of Vizima, explore the outskirts. I think that is so cool, because before there's these constant loading screens. You go into the sewer, there's loading screens, constant. It's just all the time. Having a kind of Witcher 3 design with a city like Vizima could be so cool. To be honest, I'd like them to expand Temeria a lot more and include loads of places throughout Temeria. I want them to add quests and contracts, as long as it doesn't break the central story. I think adding all that sort of stuff is completely fine. I don't see why not. I think that you could just imagine that it was in The Witcher 1 originally, we just never got to do that content. That's what I like, kind of like an expansion to what was already there. I think that's a great way of going about it. I've talked about before my ideas around the sort of systems and how I'd like them to change it, but people tend to either strongly agree or strongly disagree with a lot of those ideas, and I can understand all points of view. For example, I'm not a fan of having to constantly remake potions, because I understand the realistic aspect of it, but a lot of the time I don't want a super realistic game design, because I think it takes away from the actual fun of the game. I think there are plenty of things in real life that I don't want to have to worry about in the game. For example, I don't want to have to spend 12 real hours for the time to pass in the game. I would like to have an option to skip that by, say, meditating. Even though realistically, could you, even if you meditate, you would still experience the time, right? You know what I'm saying, right? There's a lot of things, like, for example, weather or something like that. I don't want to have to deal with a lot of that stuff, or I'd like to have options to turn it off. And it's the same with the campfire system and having to brew potions. That I get why it's cool, and I get why it's interesting. I just think for me, I kind of like the convenience and being able to enjoy the story and then have difficulty when it comes to fights and that sort of thing. I don't want to have to think, oh, I've got to go and gather which herbs and which things to get this potion. I just won't bother getting the potions, and I know that will happen. And you could say it's a selfish way to play the game, but that's my feeling about it. But back to the central point, which is about the open world. I would like to do another video discussing my wants for the Witcher Remake. I've made one on my other channel, but I'd like to talk about that here as well. But I think that the open world is a very good idea. I think The Witcher 3 had an amazing open world. The Witcher 2 did have an open world, I'd say, although it was still relatively boxed in compared to The Witcher 3. I think the great thing about The Witcher 3 is you can go back to pretty much everywhere except, like, for example, the Isle of Mists or the Land of a Thousand Fables. You can go to pretty much any of the zones, you can go back, check things out. You can miss quests if you progress too quickly, but with The Witcher 2, with The Witcher 1, you can't really do that so much. So I would like to have that kind of story back in. I'd like to have certain things explored more deeply, like say Dagon and the Vodyanoi and that sort of thing. I think that was not explored as deeply as I would have liked, so I'd love to see more of that. As I said, the general point is more quests in general. The open world thing is a good idea. Really looking forward to seeing that. So I just wanted to read one official quote we have regarding this game because I think it's one of the only pieces of official information, an actual statement from CD Projekt Red, and it might be nice for you guys to hear. The Witcher is where it all started for us, for CD Projekt Red. It was the first game we made ever, and it was a big moment for us then. Going back to this place and remaking the game for the next generation of gamers to experience it feels just as big, if not bigger, said Adam Bodowski, head of Studio CD Projekt Red. Collaborating with Fool's Theory on the project is just as exciting, as some of the people there have been previously involved in the Witcher games. They know the source material well, they know how much gamers have been looking forward to seeing the remake happen, and they know how to make incredible, ambitious games. And although it will take some time before we're ready to share more about and from the game, I know it'll be worth the wait. And I think that's exactly how I feel. I would love to see a Witcher 1 remake. I think so many games get remakes that don't really need a remake, although to be honest, I'm one of these people that kind of likes remakes if it's a story game, because I like seeing the game in the newer graphics. I don't see how that's a bad thing. But The Witcher 1 is in dire need of something like that, in my opinion. You can still play The Witcher 1 and enjoy it, but it'd be great to just see all these places with updated graphics, to be honest. That's my main feeling around all of it. So I'm just excited to go to Vizima, to explore the swamps. I want them to just add more into it. I just want it to feel more like a world, you know? I want to see Azar Javed, the Professor. It'd be great if they would. I really hope. The thing I've won almost the most from the game is that you can still carry your save to The Witcher 2. And even if it's just your decisions, that would be great. Honestly, that would be amazing. Or if although they really don't need to, if they remake The Witcher 2 one day, you could just allow it that you can carry it to The Witcher 2 remake, you know? Because that is one of my favourite things about the Witcher games, that your decisions, although tiny, do kind of affect your later games if you decide to import them. So that's all I've got to say for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do like it and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm, it helps with supporting the channel in general, and it's a very kind thing to do, so I do appreciate all of you that decide to do that and help out the channel. Check out my other channels if you're interested. I'm doing a Witcher 2 Roach's Path playthrough on my Samurai George channel, so if you want to watch that, go and check it out. See what you think. I did the Witcher 2 Iorveth's Path on this channel, so doing Roach's Path is really fun. And there's a couple other playthroughs on there, like God of War and Demon Souls, and I'm sure I'll do some other games. I want to keep it kind of fantasy genre, or kind of, you know, that sort of genre, because I think that's the sort of games I enjoy and really love, so I want to share those experiences with you guys and have chats on there, so thank you for all of that. My other channel, WitcherGeorge, as well, there's a bunch of videos on there that I'm sure you'll be interested in. There's a lot of Witcher videos I made a while ago that might be kind of interesting too, it's kind of shorter ones. And yeah, just let me know what you'd like to see on this channel. I mean, I've got a few more ideas. I'd love to do some videos about some lore. I've got a bunch of lore video ideas that I'd like to discuss with you all eventually. I've got some videos I'd like to do in regard to The Witcher 4 again, Witcher Remake, if there's a couple more ideas I can get out there. And it's always fun. I just like talking about The Witcher. I like seeing what you guys think about The Witcher, and I still love this franchise. I've been making videos now for, I don't even know how long, 7 years or something like that, about The Witcher specifically, so I hope to keep going for longer, and if you guys enjoy these videos, I really do appreciate the support. Thank you for watching today's video, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one. Good luck on your adventures, everyone, and have an awesome rest of the week.